Welcome back, everybody. This is Rafa once again, and Erik Arneson is with me. We just left the first hour talking about, I think we didn't get to Agrippa's definition of magic. We might get to that if we don't steer too much off topic, but the very interesting kind of cliffhanger that we left was the idea of technology or magic and technology. You can get into that, but first let me just share. I was looking at what is our distance. It's actually, according to Google, in kind of a, maybe it's kind of like a straight line. So if we were like able to fly, it would be 11,173 kilometers, which is 6,000
miles,
6,943 miles. So 7,000.
So I was aiming low.
Yeah.
God, that's
7,000 miles. It's a lot.
That's a long ways. So I guess I can't borrow a cup of milk.
No, or a cup of hot coffee. It would be cold by the time you got there.
Put on the coffee. I'm on my way over. Oh yeah, so technology and magic. I think this is a really fascinating one too, because I think you see people talking about this a lot now too. So this isn't necessarily like an original idea of mine, but I think that magic is a type of technology. And in fact, I think that the overlap is really, really strong. Like, so nowadays, I don't know if you have different words for this in Spanish, but in English, if you say somebody is a magician, they can be like, card tricks, saw a lady in half sort of magician, or they could be, pointy hat, wizard robes, chanting in Latin sort of magician, right? Like it's the same term, and we don't have a really good way of differentiating between those. But I think if you look back, you find out that there's not supposed to be a way of differentiating those. That idea that like reality can contain, that the physical reality can contain illusion in it, is part of magical technology. And you see, even going back further than that, the idea of like clockwork automata or moving statues or wonders created in the physical world were not really seen as anything apart from magic. There was a worldview that included kind of magic in the everyday. The world was infused with this sort of like, nothing was really seen as being apart from, the spirit or the influences of creation or whatever. Like it was all sort of seen as sort of the same system, which meant that even everyday technology was a type of magic.
Can I interject something here?
Yeah.
Recently, I spoke with a guy who is, maybe you could say, a scholar of Rudolf Steiner, and he was explaining the etheric body. Was it? I'm bad with remembering those exact terms. I think he was talking about the etheric body and how in a previous, let's say in the Atlantean times, people were able. He connects the etheric. I hope it's the right term. The etheric body to, it's like what we share with plants. Like maybe the physical body is what we share with the mineral kingdom. Then we share this other body with plants, and they were able to, like, I guess through thought alone, to like make plants blossom or grow in like real time. And it kind of touches on what you were just saying, and it came back to me.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, the example that I think is really interesting is like if you go back to the Asclepius, which is a really old Latin Hermetic text. There's talk in there about the creation of moving statues and how through creating these moving statues, they would sort of be ensouled with the soul of a god, or like the god would be present in the statue in some way. And it's sort of a fantastical thing when you read it, but then we've since discovered that like a lot of these temples had sort of, mechanical statues that had sort of moving parts or ways for like a priest to like project their voice through them, or things that would sort of create this sort of additional drama through the magic of mechanics,
Yeah, kind
right?
of theatrics. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you see it again, like for instance, in Agrippa's occult philosophy, there's sort of like a big, the first part of the work is sort of dedicated to the magic of medicine. Like, here are plants that you can take to fix the various problems with you, and here's sort of this idea of medicine. And in fact, one of Agrippa's contemporaries was Paracelsus, who was also sort of like the inventor of modern pharmaceutical, or I guess that's
Homeopathy,
probably
maybe, or
yeah
herbalism.
but
Let's say herbalism.
herbalism, yeah, but like herbalism has this thing in it where it is a technology, right? Like, these herbs are supposed to make you better, but when you
Definitely.
read the lore, they're tied to
Mm.
magical concepts, like sunflowers being tied to the sun, or cinquefoil to Venus, or things like that, where you have these planetary influences, and it's sort of seen as like overlapping and partaking of this greater magical cosmos, but it's definitely still technology.
Mm.
And because of that, I think there is something about looking at the fact that we're 11,000 kilometers away and we can talk to each other and instantaneously. Like, this is, Agrippa would have thought that this was the best magic ever,
And
and
it
he
is
totally,
magic, and it is
yeah.
an illusion also, because you said,
Mm-hmm.
there's no delay. It feels like there's no delay, but from the little that I understand from this, there actually is. And it kind of, I don't know what the word would be, but it kind of holds both videos in both ends, and shows them later in both places, so that they seem synced.
Oh,
You know what I
so
mean?
there is additional illusion stacked on
How
top of our.
when you get like feedback from the other person that you're speaking with through the computer. Yeah, if my voice was to sound from your end now, I would hear it after I spoke. So that's how I understand that there is delay.
Yeah, I
It's
see.
happened to
Yeah,
me
I see what
before.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. Yeah, but I mean, the fact that the thought that we could bring some sort of Renaissance magician forward in time and show them the sort of stuff, and they would not think that it was magic, or that they wouldn't like dive into the learning of it with the same gusto. I mean, I feel like we do our idea of magic kind of a disservice when we look at it that way. And so this sort of leads into sort of like a definition of like, maybe not what magic is so much as what a magician is. And we see this in, I think probably the best place that I've seen it is in the Picatrix, where you get this concept of, somebody who is mastering, the technology of magic or the techniques of magic. Like, they're not expected to just be good at like, finding the right incense and, writing the correct sigil and, being able to meditate and stuff. A magician is a technologist. So they were expected to be well studied and learned, right? Like, you should know about agriculture. You should know how weaving works. You should know how to, do first aid and CPR. Like, you should know how to fix shoes, and you should know how to cook, and you should know, like, the magician was sort of expected to be a really well-rounded expert, because in the process of learning how to do your thaumaturgy, your wonder working, you learn all the shortcuts you can, you learn all the knowledge you can in order to leverage this stuff. Which is why there's so much like math in the grimoires. Like, there's a mathematical sense, or like sacred geometry is sacred because it can be used to do amazing wonders in the world.
I was
Sacred
actually thinking of wearing my seed of life or flower of life shirt for today, but it's very thin, so I was going to be cold, so I chose not to. But you know what? Let me just interject something else. Just one thing. We keep forgetting how, or maybe not many people are aware how much, on the one hand, how much magic is connected to the technological metallic world we are experiencing today. How much how much the peoples that created all of this stuff were into magic during their lifetimes. Just to name an example, the guy from the rockets into space,
Oh yeah, Jack Parsons.
Correct, that guy.
Yeah,
he was part of, I think, something connected with.
I think he was in the OTO, Aleister Crowley.
With Crowley, correct.
Yeah, yeah.
So there you have the like epitome of technology. Is connected to people who were into magic, into occultism, and occultism sounds like, oh, that's such a bad thing. It's just okay, just a word for all of this. So they are definitely connected. What's the kind of the definition of technology, or the actually if you break it up, you know, the linguistics or whatever of the word, I think it comes like from techne and gnosis, so like technique or practice and gnosis, I guess, or knowledge. So I'm thinking, when I connect those terms, it's like, okay, so knowing about what things can be done, or something like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What practices can have effects on the world.
Yeah, and I think that this is I think that, you know, keeping that in mind can help us also kind of help like modernize or update our magical practices, right? So we can go into stuff not being afraid to use technology, not being afraid to do, you know, to take advantage of, you know, the stuff that we have now. So you know, like I have I wish I could show a good picture of it, but I have a planetary LED clock that I built, you know, that I programmed and that I soldered together and all this sort of stuff that sits on my altar, and it keeps track of the time. It calculates the planetary days and hours, and it changes color according to all of them. Like I can tell you right now, it is the day of Jupiter and the hour of Saturn just by looking at my altar, right? Because I have a planetary
awesome.
clock there.
Yeah, and actually I generally try to record these podcasts. I was thinking about it. I try to record these podcasts generally on Wednesdays, so that they are in tune with Mercury's for communication. But then again, Thursdays may not be connected to communication as much, but it's also connected to expansion. And our communication today has been like very much expanded, I think.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay. So like, I also want to bring in another concept, and this is something that you had brought up when we were, you know, because I think we started talking about doing this recording a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that you're talking about is like using magic to have like a more balanced life. And I think that can be taken in a number of different ways, but I think one of them does involve technology, because I think that part of magic and its intersection with technology involves education or self-education a lot of times, you know, learning more about things, learning more about, I mean, there's so much that a balanced life could involve there, you know, just learning how to be more balanced, learning, you know, better nutrition, or, you know, physical fitness, or even learning how to do your own repairs around the home, or learning how to like fix your own car, or learning how to, you know, make your own stuff and fix your own clothing. You know, there's so many things that you can learn that help you be, you know, not only like self-sufficient, but useful to people around you, or a useful part of a community, instead of just, you know, sitting at home and buying everything on Amazon and et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was thinking also being more harmonious and balanced in the way you respond to whatever happens in life. I think magic can have a very beneficial effect in that as well.
I think so too. Yeah, and I think this is where you have you start to see like an overlap with kind of the mystical or spiritual side, right? So like we talk about magic as technology, but saying that it's like just technology is kind of ignoring the breadth of the scope. So you see this a lot in grimoire magic, where there's this concept of the magician needing to have a kind of spiritual purity, or working towards some sort of spiritual purity. Sometimes it'll be, like periods of fasting or contemplation or whatever before like a big magical operation or magical ceremony. Sometimes it's more of an ongoing thing where the magician should be striving towards like a type of like ethical righteousness or kind of like moral purity, which involves being aware of, your role in the cosmos, your responsibilities in your particular like religion or religious practice, and being, sort of cognizant of that and mindfully working towards, being better, being charitable and kind and understanding love and understanding like all of these things. And that kind of practice resonates throughout your magic, whether it's your wonder working toy contraptions or your theurgic unity with the divine, right? Like it goes in both directions. It sort of is part of the practice. And I think that in particular can really help you lead a balanced life. And I think that also, I guess you could almost call it a type of I'm trying to figure out a way to say this that actually makes sense. Ethical technology, a technology of ethics, maybe a technology of righteousness, or a technology of being good. Does that make sense? I'm sure one of those terms probably makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's got to do with consciousness. It's got to do with presence, with being aware of the effects that your practice or that your actions, thoughts and words can have in the world. Mm-hmm. Not just being like, I see like one of the pitfalls of this new way of expressing it through the idea of manifestation. I see one of the pitfalls being the what's the word, the kind of the selfishness or the whim, I think is the word, the selfishness of, oh, I desire this for my life, and I'm going to do this visualization, this practice, whatever, to make it happen. But you're not sometimes the pitfall is not going down to the roots of the thing and just trying to, which on the one hand is a pitfall, on the other hand is part of the learning curve or the learning process. So like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to go for money. Okay, good. Then you have the money, but somehow you don't feel the feeling that you thought the money was going to give you, or that you unconsciously thought the thing was going to give you. Then you say, no, I know what I want is a house. Okay, then you get the house, but the feeling is still there of that kind of, there's something missing. And I don't think anything material will feel that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's totally, I think we're kind of saying the same thing, because what you're talking about is sort of just the wonder working, just the sort of like going for the manifestation stuff and ignoring that theurgic side, which is the part that is like, part of a huge part of magic. Like that balance comes from like understanding yourself and understanding your own needs and your own desires, understanding, the health of your soul and the health of your psyche. I think, and I think, in particular with like that manifestation view, another big problem with it is it does tend to put a lot of like blame and responsibility on the practitioner, no matter what, sort of saying that like everything in your life is your fault. Like you don't have a house. Oh, that's because you're not manifesting right. You don't have a car. Oh, that's because you're not manifesting right. And, sometimes, maybe some people aren't supposed to have houses and cars. And maybe that's something that you don't really know until you really like look inside yourself and have an idea. Like maybe the manifestation needs to come from a deeper place, or maybe that balance is the balance has got to be important in a different way.
Yeah, maybe you think you want a house, but what you want is to feel a sense of home, and maybe in a material sense that means you want to have a van that you turn into a what's the name,
a camper.
Yeah, a kind of camper van,
like
and
or an
you,
RV. Yeah,
you fix it up to be homely, and you travel around with that. So the house isn't coming because that's not where the sense of home will be for you. Maybe I don't know. It's just an idea.
yeah. I could see that being something. I think that there's a huge I think that there's a huge issue there for a practitioner of any sort of having that sort of balance between the higher sort of mystical experience and then the magical experience in the real world. Like you have to find a way to balance those.
And so in your terms, or in the terminology that you're studying, that's theurgy, and the other word, could you say that one? I had never heard of the word.
Thaumaturgy.
Thaumaturgy.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's it comes from Greek, and it's basically miracle making or wonder making. Like finding the house or the money,
Yeah.
or whatever
Right.
in the.
So
Yeah.
they were already talking about this kind of balance between I see it this way, like the outer world and the inner world. So and do you think in current times has there been some loss of clarity around that, or just a kind of
Yes.
tipping of the balances, and what could be the steps now to, because I generally see stuff in history going like to one extreme, then to the other, and then the third step is the unification of both things, the
mean
best of both worlds. Yeah.
you mean Hegel? You're talking about Hegel and
Right. Thesis,
thesis
antithesis.
and
Correct. Yeah.
synthesis. Yeah, I think okay. So I think all right, and I'm just spitballing here. I don't know if this is accurate or true, but I think that in the modern world we have a lot of rejection of organized religion, which maybe isn't such a bad thing. But I think that every time we have like a really big social shift like that, we tend to throw out the good as well as the bad. We throw it all out as a unit, and we forget that there are sometimes like really good things that kind of are also in there. Nothing is 100% good or 100% bad. And I think through that, a lot of modern magic, and again, again, we live in entirely different parts of the world, and things could be different where you are for sure. But what I see around here is a lot of the magic that ends up being available to people doesn't include any sort of, it's sort of like rejects all of this stuff, and it's just sort of like, here's how to get what you want, and here's how to do these scrappy things in the material world, and get your money and power and women or whatever. But it sort of ignores the fact that like there are virtues and elements of the soul that we need to be sort of like practicing and strengthening alongside all of this other stuff. I mean, I don't know. I might even be just projecting this too much because it took me so long to figure this out for myself. But I guess I just feel a lot like practitioners enter into this, and they'll, rush straight to, goetic demons, and they'll be like, I want to talk to goetic demons and look for treasure and, learn the secrets of the universe, or do all this stuff without kind of stopping to think about the fact that like these grimoires were written by extremely spiritual religious people who had this way of living that they thought would be right. I mean, some of them talk about getting your tools consecrated during a mass, or becoming a priest, or doing all these things that are sort of like, you can't ignore the fact that they had a kind of like feeling of prerequisites about like, you have to be working on being a good person before this stuff is going to be good for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're talking from experience. I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything wrong with you expressing your opinion on this. I see you get like emotional from digging into this idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it took me forever to kind of figure that out. Like I feel like there was a point where I was kind of like, oh yeah, I guess when you want to be good, you kind of have to choose that, right?
You're
Like,
gonna have to be
and
good.
yeah, but it's also it's work, right? Because it requires a lot of like looking inward, examining yourself. I guess we call it shadow work. You see that word thrown around a lot. I don't really tend to think of it as shadow work, because at least the approach I take, I guess it's kind of light work. You focus on the things that you can make better about yourself, and you work on making those things better. You don't necessarily dwell on getting rid of the negative as much as you dwell on enhancing the positive.
Yeah, it's all very subtle. On the one hand, language helps, but it also creates some disturbances. And because definitely shadow work wouldn't necessarily work if you're rejecting your shadow. You would actually be creating more of a shadow.
Right.
You necessarily, I think Jung's phrase was like, you do this thing by making the shadow visible, or giving light to the shadow, exactly like you're saying.
I think usually there's also kind of this idea of like integrating it or becoming comfortable with it or allowing it to dwell in you or whatever. And I don't know, I guess I don't know enough about it to know how my approach like really, really differs, but I do know that, I guess probably one of the practices that influenced me the most was Musar, which is a Jewish practice from Eastern Europe that is about sort of like identifying it's part of the concept is it's kind of like we have certain traits in common with the divine, and we should be learning to maximize those traits. So like benevolence and charity and mindfulness and awareness of others, and like loving kindness, and like things that you work on, and so you focus on these things. You're sort of like, how can I do more of this today? How can I understand this trait better?
Because the mind complexifies the thing so much, and uses the spiritual bypassing. It complexifies the thing so much, but you boil it down to the main ingredients. The kind of, I really like the Taoist philosophy. It's like very simple. It's like, how does nature do things? Okay, just imitate that. So it goes very much to the more, let's call them mundane, or sometimes I call this the material things, the nature things, and there's this, I don't know how to call it, this kind of doctrine or whatever, of the 5 virtues. In Chinese philosophy, you have 5 elements, and each element is connected to a virtue, and there's courtesy, there's benevolence, there's justice, etc. And those are the things that then the mind goes, okay, and complexifies it all. But I remember once when I was feeling like disconnected or very lost, not too long ago, I went and I listened to Krishnamurti. I don't know if you've ever listened to him. He's kind of like a grumpy grandfather, and basically what he was saying is, if you want to achieve something, you must do it. If you want to feel better, feel better. If you want to be more kind, be more kind. Basically, it's like we're always pushing it forward and saying, okay, when this happens, or when I change into this, I will be a better person. But actually, what you need to do is imitate, in a way, that person that you wish to become, and start being like that. Of course, stuff will come up, because you've got like the accelerator, but also the brake on, or something like that, and stuff will come up, stuff like resistance. to the what you want to create. But then there's this very subtle dance of continuing on the path to your goal, while at the same time being kind to yourself, because if you want to be more kind, okay, what is one thing that your kinder version doesn't have? Okay, it doesn't have a particular kind of negativity. Okay, so sooner or later, that negativity, you're going to have to choose to stop doing that behavior.
Yeah, I think and I think some of that comes from, you know, like if you're focusing on, you know, imitating like a particular sort of, like, let's say you want to be more kind, so you find the kindest person you know and you imitate their kindness. But part of that happens because you become mindful of the kindness in yourself, or the kindness that you want yourself to like reach towards, which is where that negativity is going to pop up, because you're paying attention to, you know, how can I be kind? You know, what is this thought that I have that keeps me from being kind? Like, you know, I want to say a nice thing to Rafa, but instead I, you know, make some stupid joke, and I'm kind of like, what made me do that? Like, why didn't I say the nice thing? Like, Rafa would have felt better, I would have felt better. My stupid joke didn't help anybody, you know. So like those sorts of things, you know, you become aware of them when you're trying to emulate that that trait. So I think that's one of the ways that you do end up dealing with the negativity, but only as it, you know, gets in your way, I guess. Is that sort of what you were saying too? I think.
Yeah, and that is magic, ladies and gentlemen.
That is magic. That is absolutely. In fact, that is, I think, one of the best parts of magic, and theurgy in particular. You know, I think that it is the way that. Okay, so like, you can sit in a cave and be a mystic and achieve enlightenment and become the most perfect person in the world. But as long as you're in that cave, it doesn't matter, because you're not interacting with the world and you're not changing, you're not improving the world at all. But if you go out in the world and you do practice kindness, and that kindness, as you practice it, improves your own soul and moves you closer to the divine, but at the same time, it improves the world around you, because your kindness is affecting other people. So basically, your theurgic work, or the work at being a better person, that type of magic, in return, gives to the world. Is that, I think that's a good spot for us to like start wrapping up. I think, you know, that kind of like, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. I tend to think like, in the end, everything's perfect. It's like you're feeling unwell. You're not feeling. You're feeling depressed. You're feeling whatever. That's what you need right now at this moment, in order to. You need to feel that. You need to be there, and not be like, okay, I'm going to manifest being happier. You don't manifest that by running away from the depression. You manifest it by integrating that depression, by understanding why you're depressed. Oh, I'm depressed because I actually want to do the things that I love. I want to create art, and I'm not doing that. And so it's not like, okay, I'm going to run away from depression and go to every night to a comedy show so I can laugh and laugh. That can help, of course, but there will be something deeper. That is, we need to accept that we are more than just this human body, and that larger whatever part of us has its own agenda, its own mission or purpose, why it's here. And through your emotions, it is talking to the mind, to the body, like giving it certain nudges or pushes towards the direction. So if you're feeling depressed, maybe there's something that you are not doing, or that you are doing, that is not in alignment with what makes you happy. So look within and see what's what's something today is Thursday. Jupiter, another association is joy, correct? Joviality, happiness, joy, bliss. What is it that makes you happy? What is it that brings you joy? If you think about doing or being some way or somewhere or something, and you think about, oh, I would love to have to live in near nature, or I would love to help people solve X particular problem, or get clarity on this, or I would like to communicate my ideas to people. You think about those things, and how do they make you feel inside? Try to find that one which kind of, you're like, oh shit, I want to do that, I love that. And if you're not doing that, maybe the depression is connected to the fact that you're resisting that urge, that spiritual or soul urge.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember to be patient. You know, sometimes moving towards that kind of joy or that kind of happiness, it can happen in really small increments, and it can, you know, it's a lifelong work.
Yeah,
you don't get there overnight. And
yes, some of the teachers that most inspire me are people, for example, channelers who channel I don't know, extraterrestrials allegedly or whatever, and one of them is called Bashar, and he says, follow your greatest joy or your greatest excitement every moment. So it's not like, oh, okay, I would love to be a wellness coach. Okay, so now I start going towards that, but in the middle there's going to be ups and downs, because that's how life works. But during that path, so maybe you could like set up a kind of goal or point you would like to reach in a particular length of time, but then in between, every moment, what gives you joy? Okay, do you want to be doing what you're doing right now? Is this giving you joy? And what about now? And now, in every moment, every moment, every moment. Okay, it's very hard. If you think like that, you can go kind of crazy, but keeping that idea in mind, every time that you become conscious of how you're feeling, and if it's not feeling like you would like to feel, if it's, then try to think, okay, this is maybe a nudge from my higher self telling me, okay, look at the compass in your heart, and see what would give you joy right now. And of course, we also spoke about this, and we'll leave it for another time. We spoke about this in our messages before, when we were kind of organizing the idea for the show today, of this push and pull between doing what's comfortable and doing stuff that's kind of pushing our boundaries, because, oh, my greatest excitement might be to just rest all day and do nothing. And it's not that it's wrong, but there is a kind of balance with the other thing, with effort, because we kind of resist, I think, this kind of, it's when we are in this full type of stage, it's like when you're starting something new, you're bad at it. And even if it's something that you think about it and you say, oh, I love this, yeah, if you've never done it before, you're going to start sucking at it. But
oh yeah, and you might not even know how bad you are at it at first. Like, that's the thing that's so exciting. You might be like, oh, this is great, I'm wonderful, I'm a natural, and it won't be until later where you're like, oh, I was not a natural.
This has been amazing, my friend. I love you. You inspired me to, you said, oh yeah, instead of saying the nice thing, I made this joke, or I say this other thing. And I really want to say this, I have a great time when we speak, and I really appreciate how you inspired me, or gave me an extra push unknowingly to go forward with creating the podcast.
Wow. Well, I thank you. That's a huge honor. I love your work, Rafa. I love what you're doing, and thank you for continuing to invite me on. I think this is my third, fourth. Who knows? It's been many times.
Yeah, I think it's the third, and I would be extremely honored to have you back on. I really, my definition of friendship, throughout life, and especially in the latest years, it's been morphing and changing so much. How I can, sometimes it's hard for me to like accept it to myself, to say, yeah, I consider Erik a friend. I mean, we've never been physically in the same space. We've never shared.
We've probably never been within 2,000 miles of each other.
Never. We've never shared intimate, like emotional or where I am in life or whatever. But we have a kind of friendship which I think will be greater in people's lives moving forward, especially with the ideas of technology. The only thing I wish is if there was a way that we could like look into each other's eyes at the same time as we are speaking.
Yeah, we can't. Look at my camera.
I know that you're looking into my eyes, but I'm looking at the camera. And now I'm
looking into the camera too. I don't know what we don't know what happened there.
That's one thing that we need to make manifest in this world. That technology, some sort of that
eyeball camera.
Yeah, eyeball camera. Yeah. But not inside. Not a camera inside our eyeballs, please. No.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
I think technology will give us more of a remembrance that we can already do these things without technology, and we will be able to like drop the metal cable thing outside. I think that's where we're going. I think.
I hope so. That'll be an interesting time. Well, thank you, Rafa. This has been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you again, Eric. So your website, arnemancy.com.
Yes, arnemancy.com. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's where people can find your podcast, which is amazing as well. They can get in contact with you. You're an amazing tarot reader. People can actually go back and check out our previous episode, which was a pre whatever.
We did a forecast.
A forecast. Yes. That's the word. Thank you.
Yes.
For this year, which has been very, very interesting how the year has been developing in connection to that. But I want to thank you for your time. I know you have another appointment in a few minutes. So your website, and people can get in touch with me. If you're watching this on Patreon, thank you for the support. If for some reason I don't know, I feel like just posting both parts on YouTube, I invite you guys to go to the Patreon, which you can find in the description below. It's patreon.com/Rafa Martinelli, just my name. And I appreciate everybody very much. I love you guys as well. I love everybody the same amount, please, no fighting. I love everybody the same, but different, in different ways,
Right. Like chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream. Yeah. They're both good. They're just good in different ways.
Exactly. This has been a great time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Eric. And I hope you have an amazing rest of the week and an amazing time between now and our next conversation. So thank you so much for being there.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.